In this episode of The Retirement Spy, Duncan interviews Jim Durrett, who shares his journey from a successful career in environmental affairs and urban planning to his upcoming retirement. Jim discusses the importance of finding identity beyond work, his passion for biking, and how it enriches his life. He provides insights into different types of bikes, safety equipment, and the biking community in general, encouraging listeners to embrace biking as a fulfilling retirement activity. Jim also reflects on his future goals and the importance of serving others in retirement. Welcome to this week's episode of The Retirement Spy, where we share experiences in a collaborative platform for those entering phase 2 of life and are ready to embrace this chapter with gusto and an attitude of carpe diem. You can find out more about us at www.theretirementspy.com or send us ideas and topics to info@theretirementspy.com. Today, we're proud to have Jim Durrett, our guest speaker, who will be sharing his thoughts about biking in retirement. Jim and I met through Leadership Atlanta years ago, and he serves currently as the president of the Buckhead Coalition. He shares with us, and will be sharing with us, retiring and what that will look like in spring of 2026, Jim, I believe, when you're retiring, which is a loss for our community, but a great gain for our fellow Phase 2 fans. Jim, tell us a little bit about your Phase 1 career before your future retirement and what led you to the prestigious role you have now running the Buckhead Coalition.
Well, Duncan, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and share my story with the folks that view your podcast. I am from Atlanta, a native, and when I left the University of Virginia back in 1979, I came home to my first job, and it was in sales. And after about a year and a half, I realized that it wasn't for me, and I wasn't really all that good at it. And I read a book by John McPhee called Basin and Range, and it's a book about geology, and it really intrigued me. Now, I'd spent my entire life up until that point going out to the Tetons, where my grandparents were fortunate enough to buy some land in 1955. And so I've been climbing around in the mountains my entire life, but I'd never really thought about how rocks could end up being part of my career. Long story, somewhat short, I decided to go back to school and ended up getting a master's degree in geology after getting an undergraduate degree in economics. And I was able to come back home to be a professional hydrogeologist.
Wow.
And so I'm back in Atlanta. It's the late 1980s at this point, and I'm doing a lot of volunteering, using my expertise in the sciences to help the Georgia Conservancy do its work in water resources, to help the Environmental Protection Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources to develop different environmental programs. And through that volunteer work, people are getting to know me, and I'm getting to know an awful lot of people and organizations and institutions. And because of the relationships that I was developing, I was invited to become a trustee of the Georgia Conservancy. And then in 1996, Clay Long, who then was the chair of the board of the Georgia Conservancy, called me up and asked me what it would take to be convinced to leave my job and to go to the Georgia Conservancy to be their chief operating officer. So in the summer of 96, when we're all excited about the Olympics coming to Atlanta, I'm going into this nonprofit career. A couple of years later, the president of the organization died by suicide. And for a number of reasons, I decided that not only was I not a good successor to that position at that time in my life, but I also decided it would be prudent for me to change scenery. It was very traumatic, and I decided that I would look elsewhere. And the Metro Atlanta Chamber at the time was looking for a vice president of environmental affairs. So I go to the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and I'm working there, developing some programs for our members having to do with environmental sustainability and what we at the time called smart growth. And after about 2 years at the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Urban Land Institute came knocking on the door, and I was invited to apply for a brand new position as executive director of the Atlanta District Council of the Urban Land Institute. So I went to the Urban Land Institute, and one of the things that I did eventually while I was at ULI was I helped to provide Urban Land Institute perspectives and resources and members to inform a Metro Atlanta Chamber initiative called the Quality Growth Task Force, which had been pulled together to figure out how Atlanta ought to be growing in a different way, because the way we were growing at the time was just unfettered sprawl.
Yes.
And it had impacted our region's ability to pull down federal transportation funds. So they ended up coming up with a bunch of recommendations for how we needed to grow differently. And the very last recommendation was that a new organization needed to be created that would bring people together and make the first 26 recommendations come true. And Tom Bell chaired that task force, and Tom turned to one of his lieutenants, Larry Gellerstedt, at the time, and said, Larry, you go make that happen. So Larry Gellerstedt created a new organization with the financial support principally of the Woodruff Foundation. And I was recruited away from the Urban Land Institute to run the Livable Communities Coalition. So this was a brand new organization that was a coalition of lots of other organizations that we pulled together to local governments around the region understand that they had more control over how they could grow than just accepting all kinds of development permits and it sort of being the wild, wild west. We basically were preaching the gospel of smart growth, walkable communities, building transportation investments and vertical development in concert with each other, things that are common sense now, mixed use communities. But back then, we weren't doing that. And then the headhunters came and said, we're looking for someone to run the Buckhead Community Improvement District. And I was encouraged to pursue that opportunity. I was fortunate to be offered that job, and that gave me an opportunity to actually put facts on the ground instead of just talking about how we need to do things differently. We could work in Buckhead to make smart growth happen there. And so that was almost 17 years ago. And I've been doing that ever since then. And then in 2020, Sam Massell announced that he was going to step down after 32 years of running the Buckhead Coalition. And I was encouraged to take on that role in addition to the Community Improvement District role. So that's been my career. I haven't defined what a Community Improvement District is. I haven't defined what the Buckhead Coalition is, but if you want to get into that, we can talk about that as well.
Well, as a real estate professional, I know that your contributions, especially to Buckhead, has been tremendous. So we'll be sorely losing your expertise as you go into retirement. In the subject of retirement, we're going to talk about biking in a minute because that's your genius as our guru. But tell me, if you can, as retirement is approaching next year, what plans or what thoughts have you given as to how our audience is asking the same question? How are you going to find, what are you going to be doing? What's your plan for retirement? How are you going to spend your time?
Well, I think it's important that I have not been defined by what I do for a living. It's probably because I've sort of repotted myself after several years multiple times so that I'm not known as that guy who did that job for 35 years. And so I have hobbies. I have interests. My wife shares some of those hobbies and interests. So we are fortunate that we're going to be able to enjoy our time together. And I'll talk about what those interests are. I intend to spend a good bit of my retirement being there for my family. We have two adult boys, one of whom now has a child with another one on the way. So we have a little over 1-year-old grandson, and we have a granddaughter who's going to be coming in January. And our other son is here in Atlanta. The first one is in Denver, Colorado. So we will spend time, but first asking, how much time do you want of us? We're here to help you. We're here to support you and to enjoy your life through our eyes. So that's
You said something really important, and I don't mean to interrupt. We can edit these interruptions out, but I think you said something really important that our audience is going to latch hold of for the good or the bad. You said that you've never felt an identity to what you do from a 9 to 5. And I think so many of us do. And what a refreshing statement that you made to give you the license in retirement to be something different because you haven't lived your identity associated with your 9 to 5. And congratulations for that. I think that's helped. It's been freeing, hasn't it?
It has been freeing. But the one constant, Duncan, is that it's been a career of service to others. And so people are wondering, and I'm wondering even, how will I be serving others? I mentioned that I want to serve my family and be the best grandfather, father, husband that I can be. But after spending several decades, working on what I believe are important initiatives that have helped the Atlanta region on its trajectory, and we've got so many challenges in front of us and opportunities. I will be looking for an opportunity or two or three where I can lend my time and talents and perhaps treasure to help solve problems or help move things forward. But I am doing my best to not say yes to lots of offers that are coming my way even now, because I want to experience honest to goodness retirement for a little while before I say, yes, I'm going to help this organization. Yes, I'm going to work on this issue.
Jim, your DNA is such that you have been a servant all of your career, and it's a wonderful thing. So many of our people in retirement are saying, well, now I'm done with my 9 to 5. Now I can start giving back to the community because I have the time to do so. I have no doubt that as you go forward, you will continue to serve the community like you've done so well. And kudos to you. One of our um, guests that we interviewed gave a recommendation as you're going into retirement. There's always a tendency for the tentacles to draw you back into work, whether you like it or not. And the recommendation was whatever you do for 6 months, don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Turn your cell phone off. Don't answer emails. In other words, experience retirement or make a plan, because it's for important people like yourself, it's way too easy that somebody's going to give you a call with what sounds like an exciting project, maybe financially lucrative, maybe not, just maybe more of a passion project. And it's easy, especially in the first months as you're floundering, trying to figure out what you're going to do with this newfound freedom, to be pulled back into something that may or may not serve you. So kudos to you. Take time off, turn off the phone, don't do anything until you've kind of sorted out really what it is you want to do, don't you think?
I couldn't agree more.
Tell me, the subject today is about biking. Tell me how you got involved with biking. I'll tell the audience, when I met Jim at Leadership Atlanta years ago, whoever I meet, I have a takeaway from people, whether it's where they grew up, what their unique job is, what their unique hobby is. And what I remember about Jim when I met him years ago was biking, and it stuck in my head. And when I saw Jim at a police foundation function we were at a few weeks ago, I said, I need to talk to Jim about biking because I don't have bikers as friends, and this will be a great topic for our Retirement Spy crowd. Tell me how you got involved in biking.
Good.
Beyond our kid trivia pursuits of riding bikes after school like we all did, but I'm talking really about the next level of how we developed our boyhood passion to something that's more
Right.
adult oriented.
Yeah. So when I was at the Metro Atlanta Chamber, 1998 and 9 and getting close to 2000, Lee Iacocca founded an electric vehicle company that was all about electric bikes. And in 1999, I think it was, the very first e-bikes were being sold in Atlanta. And I had always enjoyed riding a bicycle, but to ride a bike in the summer to my job downtown Atlanta with no shower facilities, that sort of thing, wasn't an option for me in terms of how to commute. But an electric bike, on the other hand, would allow me to enjoy bicycling, which is one of my greatest joys, but not sweat. So I could use that as a commute vehicle. And so that is really about the time that I started riding bikes pretty darn regularly. And then eventually someone in my neighborhood said, Jim, did you know there's a bunch of guys in your neighborhood who ride regularly, like early in the morning and then on weekends, and I didn't know this. So I started riding with a group of Type A cyclists, mostly in my neighborhood, called the Briarcliff Bonsai. So shout out to the Bonsai boys. And that was when things really got serious because we push each other, and we would ride usually 3 mornings a week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then that would be about a 20-mile ride at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then there'd be a ride on the weekend, and it would be a longer ride, 40 to 60 miles, something like that. So I think when you met me, I had probably recently had a crash on my bike. It might have been 2013 or something. It was right about when I was going through Leadership Atlanta. Um, and so that, when people see you and you're in a sling and that sort of thing, they say, "What happened?" And so it was riding a bicycle with the Bonsai group and hitting a pothole in the dark that morning. But later on that year, in September of 2013, this was really the pinnacle of cycling for me. I rode strictly a road bike. So would do a lot of races and century bike rides, that sort of thing. And I learned that there was a 205-mile bike race out in Utah and Idaho and Wyoming that started in Logan, Utah, and ended in Teton Village in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is just less than a mile, the finish line, less than a mile from the cabin that my grandparents built on property that they had bought. And I would it was 2012 when I saw the finish line and asked them, "What is this?" And they told me. And I decided next year I'm going to do that race. So in the September of 2013, I rode 205 miles on my road bike in 10 hours, 47 minutes, and 55 seconds.
That intimidates me so much just listening to that. And what a great start. Question, what a great accomplishment you have, but our audience or people approaching retirement, and biking can be, there's several different kind of bikes. It all starts with buying a bike. So you outlined something I think is tremendous that a lot of our audience would like, myself being intimidated. Give me your perspective of the bike, your first bike. How do you start? And my mind goes to a Schwinn bicycle, the Spider I had when I was, a young kid. But today, let's go through the lists. We've got mountain bikes, we've got road bikes, we've got hybrid bikes, we've got e-bikes. I think mountain bikes probably the last thing I would want. But tell me about the biking options for the biking enthusiasts and where they could start.
Well, you listed most of them. There's kind of a newish style of bike also called a gravel bike, and it's like a more sturdy road bike with fatter tires, so you can be riding on gravel roads and gravel trails.
So a road bike, let's treat everybody like an idiot on the podcast, me being the first. A road bike is what it sounds like. It's something I'm going to ride on the asphalt pavement in urban areas or wherever a road may be, right?
That's right. And it'll have skinny tires. It's all about speed, really. And you get down in the drops on the handlebar. And if somebody has not been doing bike riding and they're approaching retirement and they're thinking, I'm thinking maybe I'm going to want to do some cycling, I expect that you should not be thinking I'm going to get a $15,000 uh, very lightweight road racing bike. I think you're going to do something that is a little more ergonomic, not something you got to get hunched over. So,
More comfortable seat. That's the first thing I think about, is that seat does not look comfortable at all.
well, you get used to it. You get used to it. Time in the saddle will make any seat comfortable for you. But I'd say, today, if I were starting right now, I would probably start with an e-bike. I think that electric bikes have come a long way since the days of Lee Iacocca in 1999. You can get them so that they fit your body. You feel comfortable on it. With an electric bike, you can also handle hills. You and I are in Atlanta. Atlanta's a hilly, and the region is a hilly place. And I think that as in Atlanta, as we're building out, I'm jumping around here, I apologize that, but in Atlanta, as we're building out these multimodal trails, places where you can not have to be on the road, where you can ride a bike, but also ride next to people that are walking or jogging, you're going to want to have an e-bike in order to allow you to go further and get to whatever your destination needs to be. So I would look carefully at e-bikes. I have a second home in a place called Serenbe south of Atlanta, and the road biking around here, that's where I am right now. The road biking here is outstanding. Call them the roads out there, they call them the silk sheets. Well, they also have what's called the dirty sheets, and those are the gravel roads.
In Serenbe, of course. Yes.
So I've got a road bike, I've got a gravel bike, I've got several electric bikes, and you just need to find one that you're going to be comfortable on and be able to develop confidence. Because as we get older, our mind makes a promise that the body can't fill, to quote a Grateful Dead lyric, and you don't have as good a balance as you once did. You may think you do, but you don't. And so you need to think very carefully about that. You should maybe even take a bicycle safety lesson. You'd probably go to Propel ATL, Rebecca Cerna's organization, and get some lessons on how to ride a bike in urban areas. And always wear a helmet. And as I was thinking about this, Duncan, several years ago, maybe even a decade or more, in our family's little neighborhood in Jackson Hole, there was a retiree who had lived a very good life and was in his retirement. And he was riding a bicycle on one of the paved trails in Grand Teton National Park. He was not wearing a helmet. And where he was riding wasn't tricky, wasn't dangerous, but something happened. Maybe he ran over a stick or something, and he fell and had a traumatic brain injury and lost his life very shortly after that. So that is, for me and for all of us that are paying attention here, a really important lesson that even if you're just going to be going down to the corner store or going for a quick ride around the block, put a helmet on.
We'll talk about equipment because that's an important part of this, but I'm thinking of the hazards that come from biking and what little I know about biking, the people I know who've had bad accidents, there are a few things. You mentioned one, potholes.
Mhm.
It's amazing how even when you're focused and you're riding, you miss a pothole. It could be a turtle. I've had people say they wrecked on a turtle, and you're like, well, wouldn't you see the turtle? When you're in the zone on a 20-mile run and your head's down, sometimes you're not going to see the turtle. And I hear this may be urban myth, Jim, but the number one accident, urban wise, are people opening their car doors. You're in urban areas where people do parallel parking and they don't see you and they open their door to go to work because they parallel park and here comes a bike and you've been, what a horrible accident to have. But these things are important. Let's switch gears and talk about the equipment. You've got your bike now, and it could be, by the way, we're eliminating mountain bikes. Nobody on this podcast should be doing mountain bikes unless you're retiring at age 35. Congratulations for you. Welcome to be the youngest member of the Retirement Spy Network. But mountain bikes, let's share with the audience what mountain bikes are, Jim, and then we'll move on to the equipment and what mountain biking is.
Mountain biking is riding a sturdy bike that has gearing that allows you to pedal easily up hills. You are usually on trails or tracks, off-road, going through the woods, or on in the mountains, and you're dodging roots and rocks. I've done it before. It's incredibly enjoyable, but it's also something that's really tricky. And so if you are taking this up as something recent in your retirement years, you probably are going to want to find trails that are more wide open and that don't have obstacles that you got to dodge and manage. But riding through the woods and riding in the mountains, it's a wonderful feeling. So if you're spending part of your retirement in the Colorado Rockies, for instance, there are lots of opportunities to ride off-road on trails. And that would be the sort of place that I think getting a mountain bike, once you really learn how to ride it, would be a really nice addition to your retirement time. So
And it
that's
doesn't And it doesn't have to be. It's the opposite end of the spectrum. The adrenaline junkies are going on tight trails down steep paths and things like that. But to your point, mountain biking still can be available for the retirement crowd. I didn't mean to make fun of it because there are enjoyable rides in the mountains with wider trails that are not quite as treacherous as what I watch on um,
Yeah.
the Red Bull channel, so to speak. Let's talk about equipment. Helmet is just a no-brainer. Whether
Now,
you're skiing or riding bikes, you gotta start with the helmet. What else do we need? What else should people be looking for?
I think that it's really important to have lights on your bike, both lights that are going forward and red lights that are pointed at people behind you. If you're riding in dusk or dawn or even in nighttime, if you don't have lights on, and I see people out there riding without any lights, and I'm thinking, you are an accident waiting to happen. That's extremely important. You should wear brightly colored clothing. You should think about getting gloves that allow you to grip the handlebars and not get all sweaty and give you a better grip. You want shoes that have stiff bottom soles so that as you are pedaling, all of your energy is going into moving the pedals and your feet aren't flexing. That's, I think, something really good. You should maybe think about not getting shoes that have the, lost for a word, but
The
the
clamps.
cleat on your shoe. You don't want to get them so that they are sticking out. You've seen people that are sort of waddling into the coffee shop after they've gotten off their bike. You want to have just recessed cleats so that you can walk anywhere and not be doing the click, click, click. So lights, helmet, clothing, shoes, gloves. That's pretty much, I think,
And
what.
clothing, to be specific, you're sweating a lot. So you'll find specific bike clothing, but to give the audience a degree of pause on the road bikes, if you've sat on the seats are very uncomfortable. The clothing that you're wearing now is very padded. It's geared for riding. So it's not just putting on a piece of spandex and going riding. It's much more intense and much more designed for enjoy.
Yeah, no, you can get, and I would wear bibs. So don't just pull pants on, but you actually get bibs that go over your shoulders, and it keeps everything together. And then you put your shirt on top of that. And typically, your cycling kit, the shirt has pockets in the back, so you can put your snacks back there. You can put your CO2 and your tire changing kit back there. You can put an extra water bottle behind you. So it's a way to carry more things with you that you might want to have access to while you're out on.
Road bikes to e-bikes. I'm an entry level biker and I want to get started. And I know that I'd like to be on the road, but I also am taking your recommendations to e-bikes. Give me a range, not for anything other than to give a demonstration of the magnitude of where is affordable and where is really kind of silly for the people who are professional on road bikes, and then go to e-bikes for us.
So you can probably find a pretty good road bike for a couple $1,000, and it goes up from there. For an e-bike, I happen to have one, and it's I've actually got two of them. I got one for my wife and one for me. But it's a Velotric, Velotric. For my research, those seem to be the best bang for the buck in terms of the bike only costs around $1,200 last time I looked. It goes for a pretty darn good distance on a charge. It's ergonomic. You can step through, not having to step over the saddle, which is a benefit for those of us whose bodies are not as limber as they used to be. And you can spend 3, 4, 5 times that on fancier electric bikes. They make electric mountain bikes now, electric road bikes, every kind. There's just a lot out there, but there are several places that sell them in Atlanta, and you can look online and do your own research. But that's what my research led me to.
Let's talk about the biking community. Our family really loves, and I'm not being paid to say this, we love back roads because we like being out in the mountainous areas. And back roads as an outfitter gives you the opportunity to have trekking vacations, biking vacations, hiking vacations, or that you can do the trifecta on some of these trips. Tell me about those who want to travel and have biking experiences. And I mentioned back roads. I've heard some Atlanta friends of mine have had wonderful experiences when they're going to Napa with the wives, and it's as much biking as you want, or it can be a picnic with some wine and a little bit of biking, and it's more of a wine tasting trip than it is a biking. Tell me from your experiences and travels where people can find biking adventures beyond back roads, if you know of any.
I sure do. In fact, my wife and I have done a couple of biking tours in the last couple of years that are not back roads. But interestingly, when we've been on those trips, we've seen several back roads tours at the same time. What we kind of jokingly say is that back roads is really about really nice meals and wine with a little bit of biking in between. And what we did on our last two trips, one was an electric bike and boat tour of the Dalmatian coast of Croatia. And we did that with a company called VBT.
VB.
VBT. They started a long time ago as Vermont Bicycle Tours, but they do so much more than that now. They just call themselves VBT. And we had a wonderful time on that Croatia trip. And then this past August, we did a ride through Glacier National Park and Waterton Lakes Park. And we did that with a company out of Colorado called Lizard Head Cycling, and had a wonderful experience with both of those. So you can do your research. You can find out what customers have said about them or places they go. We intend to do more of that in our retirement because there's no better way to experience a place than while you are on two wheels with the world, at your disposal to look around and take your time and stop and smell the roses and look at the incredible views and just say to yourself, boy, how fortunate we are.
And I want to encourage our audience because I've had a little bit participation in this. These can be as intense as you want them to be as a biker, or for those who are a little intimidated, like myself, who remember my Schwinn Spider bike, and that's my expertise. You're not having to really have a lot of exertion. You can take the spectrum of biking the way you want to be more sightseeing than biking or more biking than sightseeing or both. So don't be intimidated about this. And there are lots of outfitters shared one with the Jim just shared good ones with us, which I think are wonderful, but don't be intimidated by this. Jim, question, on a local level, you've got a biking group. I know there are a lot of people who one may be new to town, so this isn't necessarily Atlanta specific, but how do you find your right biking group? And is it all biking all the time, or is this every biking group is a little bit different in what they do, how they ride? Is it really a coffee biking group, a wine biking group, or really we're training for the next competition type groups? And how do you find these groups?
They're online.
Of course.
All you got to do is the ubiquitous Google search, and you're going to find a community. There are cycling clubs, I'll call them, that are geography based. So I know there's one in Virginia Highlands, and you see their kits, VA, HI, maybe Flyers, and they will leave from Virginia Highlands and they'll ride out to Stone Mountain and back, that sort of thing. There are different groups like that. There's one that's the initials are MAAC. It's principally an African American cycling group. And they do a lot of cycling from Atlanta south to go down to the Serenbe area, the Chattahoochee Hills area. You can find them everywhere. And there's different rides, like the Pizza Ride is a ride that's popular in part of Atlanta where we live right now. So they're out there. You just need to do your research, and you'll see lists of different cycling groups that you can look into joining.
We're so fortunate in Atlanta, and Jim has actually been behind some of these initiatives with his partnerships and other organizations. In Atlanta, we have great pathways. I think of the Silver Comet Trail, of course. I think of our Buckhead Path that we have, or the Path 400, I believe is what we call it, that you've been a big part of that, you and Denise Starling. And we're so blessed with that. And we hope we see more of these coming along, because I've had friends of mine who've come from biking centric communities like in California, and they said, we love Atlanta. We just wish they were more bike friendly in places we can go to have more biking experiences. To your point, Google or search engines in general are a great place to look for your communities, where to ride your bike, who to share it with. And like every other kind of community, you will find every shape, flavor of people, and it's not an exclusive type of a group. They're very welcoming in everything that they do.
Yep, they sure are. I was in Decatur about a week ago, where hundreds of cyclists gathered to celebrate the life of Ken Roscoff, who was a cyclist and an attorney, and he and his law partner specialized in, among other things, bicycle law. And Ken Roscoff had a cycling crash on Claremont Road, I believe it was, and lost his life. And the community came together to celebrate his life. And just being among those people, you realize this is an amazing community of people who value cycling for exercise, for fun, or for mobility. And you're going to win wherever you go because it's a good group of people.
Jim, you've been so kind with your time today, and what a great lesson we have for biking. What great education you've given us. As been prompted in recent podcasts, I'm going to ask you a question whose purpose is meant to engage our audience, to ask the question in contemplation of when and how much time they'll have in retirement. So I'll ask you the question I'm asking of all my guests now, and it's not meant to be morbid, but instructive. When do you feel that you're going to die?
I'm going to retire on my 9th birthday, Duncan, and I am going to live for at least 21 more years. So I see 90 years old as right about the time when I will transition to whatever is next. My parents lived to be in their mid-80s, and I think with advances in science and medicine and understanding of wellness and taking care of ourselves, my expectation is that I will outlive my parents' life horizon. And I think 90 is a good target because you want your last years to be good quality years and degrading in terms of quality of life. I think that's where it's going to be.
What a great way to answer that. And now that puts perspective of the time that you now have to start putting that great retirement plan together and how much fun you and your wife and family are going to have together for the next 21 odd years, which will be wonderful. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a delight. I hope we can catch up with you in the future to find out how the biking adventures are going. And I hope that you'll at least not start a new occupation for at least another 6 months after you've hit your retirement from the Buckhead Coalition. And thank you again for all the service you've given to the city of Atlanta.
Thank you, Duncan. It's been a pleasure.